All right, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Shayla. After reading this new Opportunities in Geometry Education at the Primary School paper, there were a few things that were kind of surprising out of this paper. I remember in geometry learning just kind of a lot of memorization, and this is a triangle, and this is a square, and like the angles and some of the stuff that we're doing now, but it seems like a lot more often people are looking more into spatial awareness and taking the shapes that we're learning and like actually doing things with them, and how can you manipulate them, and how can kids move them around in their head. And even like reading about spatial awareness, it kept talking about it in this paper. I had to look it up just to kind of figure out what exactly they meant, because I kind of assumed it was more like picturing what an inch is or picturing what an acre is, but it's more the definition that I found said it's the capacity to understand and explain the spatial relations among objects or space, and like to create, rotate, and transform them kind of in your brain, which I just thought was kind of a cool idea, I guess. And they're even kind of talking more about in the paper, at least, if you have to sacrifice more 3D concepts to really solidify the 2D concepts, and having like more tech games, and it seems like it's becoming a lot more abstract, which I mean definitely makes sense. At the last question at the end of this thing, it says, do you think we're moving in the right direction? And like, I definitely think the way that technology is moving, you can look things up. So you can take a picture, look it up, you can find all those definitions, you can find the theorems, you can find a lot of this stuff online. But I think being able to teach kids how to actually use that and manipulate it and be creative with it and use different ideas to help them problem solve is definitely much more helpful than slamming information at them that they're probably just gonna either forget, get frustrated with, or they can just look up at this point. I do think a lot of it needs to be, they need to learn and they need to understand, and like, you should kind of know ish what pi is, and you should know what a circle is, and you should know a lot of these basics. But I think having a lot of these more practical based learning practices is much more helpful, and it seems like a lot of education is moving that way, just with, again, people being able to look things up easy enough. It was kind of funny because it reminded me of this game that we used to play online where you're like flipping blocks around and you try to get it to go into this little hole. And it seems like that type of thing is going to be a lot more frequent, and like trying to problem solve and put things into spaces and trying to find answers in ways you can't just look up necessarily. Again, it seems like math is moving that way, science is moving that way, the language arts, the history, like it all seems to kind of be moving in this way of, since technology is the way it is, we can look stuff up, but how do we use information that we have? How can we problem solve? Which I think is awesome, and I'm kind of excited to learn more about and start teaching.